Hello and welcome to another episode of the Minor Issues Podcast. I'm Mark Thornton, coming to you from the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. Well, I'm sure many of you are just as uncomfortable as I am when virtually the entire economics profession supports the Austrian position on free trade. Even Paul Krugman and Karl Marx support free trade. In fact, many of them do not support or even understand the entire position of the Austrian school on free trade, but at least they support our view opposing tariff protectionism. However, once you get past the obvious issues of free trade and opposing rent control, the list of agreement in polling between most economists and Austrians becomes short, contains some rather inane items and issues that are indirectly related to free trade and price controls. The limited consensus on the big issues indicates to me that the economics profession has largely broken with the principles of economics, or has at least compartmentalized them for convenience or modeling purposes. Unfortunately, breaking with economic principles opens up free play with ideological and political goals that are at odds with society in general. Here also, fantasies for designing society can be entertained rather than discouraged. So why do many economists support the Austrian position in favor of free trade? Well, I know the Marxists are internationalists, so they support or should support free trade on ideological grounds. Or maybe the case for free trade is so obvious and clear that any economist would support free trade. We may think the case for free trade is clear, but that same comprehensive logic of economics does not seem to apply in economist thinking in other areas like fiscal policy and monetary policy. And also, the irrationalism of protectionist policies is far from clear to very intelligent lay people. In fact, I recorded an in-depth unanimity podcast episode to explain why so many intelligent people are confused about tariffs. My hypothesis concerning this odd agreement is that the tariff issue literally forces people and other economists to think like an economist. With this issue, people are forced to follow Bastiat and Hazlitt into proper economic thinking, the basic lessons of economics. In Henry Hazlitt's book, The Economics in One Lesson, he shows us the logic behind Bastiat's parable of the broken window, where a hoodlum's dirty deed is first thought to ignite a process of good, beneficial, expansive economic activity. But only once seriously considered, the resources devoted to fixing the window could have instead done some positive good without all the shards of glass, that which is not seen. To simplify, the lessons of economics is that we have to consider not just the immediate benefit of some policy action, but also the longer-term ramifications of that policy. And second, we must not just consider the direct beneficiary of a policy, but also how it impacts others in the broader society. Bastiat and Hazlitt take us from single-point thinking to expand our thoughts to all people in dimensions of time and space. This properly reflects the complex interconnectivity of economic activity and our lives in general. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here And let's not read too much thinking into our mainstream economists. Their thinking, like our own, is dominated by mundane thoughts like, what are we going to eat now? Or how is our favorite team going to perform this coming weekend? It turns out that all economists are pretty good at two-dimensional thinking in terms of price controls, like the minimum wage law and rent control law. Ludwig von Mises started out his professional career analyzing rent control, but he ended up crafting a whole area of economic analysis he called interventionism. With minimum wage laws, the boost to wage rates helps one group, the low-skilled workers, but hurts another group, employers, and that puts the overall issue in doubt. Putting a ceiling on rents does benefit renters, at least in the short run, but harms landlords, putting apartment availability and quality in doubt. This raises similar questions about tariff protecting jobs. If the Economist looks at their graph paper now, it shows that foreigners are hurt, but so are consumers who must do without. The government receives revenue from tariffs, but that's paid by domestic consumers. Meanwhile, foreigners who are better at making a particular good, for some reason, are forced out of selling in our market, and locals who were better at making something completely different are now lured into producing what we have previously relied on those clever foreigners to provide. And that certainly doesn't seem efficient, and it isn't. In conclusion, the issue of protectionism forces mainstream economists to consider aspects of the Bastiat-Hazlitt lesson of considering the ramifications beyond the direct consequences, and to conclude that the cost of the protective tariff are greater than the benefits. And this may in turn teach us Austrians a thing or two about issues where mainstream economists simply don't get our point. Maybe we can do better in the future. And finally, if you still have hang-ups about things such as U.S. manufacturing and middle-class jobs, or you're worried about China, please stay tuned, and hopefully I can address them in future episodes of the Minor Issues Podcast.